Hello, beautiful sisters, and today we are going to just worship God with gratitude. If you do have your gratitude journal, we are going to look at day 2. We're going to pick up day 2 on all through the week. But for those that are just passing by and wanting a devotional on gratitude, because we're celebrating the month of gratitude here in HB Ministries, we're going to look at Romans 11:33 and posture our souls around God's hand. And I want to take you a little bit deeper into what this means. So let's read this verse together. It says, "Oh, the depth of his riches and wisdom and knowledge of God. How unsearchable are his judgments and how inscrutable his ways." Romans 11:33. I looked at that word this morning, inscrutable. And on the side of my journal, I circled that word and I went ahead and I looked at synonyms for them. And inscrutable means incomprehensible. God's hands and his ways are incomprehensible. His ways are unfathomable, unintelligible. Like we can't understand or imagine. It will never be clear. We will never be able to comprehend. We will never understand the obvious because it's like putting our pinky or our toe in the ocean. His ways are huge. And so as I began to read, let's read this together. Asking for and receiving daily bread at God's hands plays a vital part in learning to trust him and enduring life's challenges. We also need a daily portion of divine bread to become what we must become, to believe, to behold, and to become the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ. God is greater than man. He is beyond us. Our minds cannot grasp the greatness of God. That is why we are always being surprised by God if we trust him. He is always enriching us in ways that we don't anticipate. Now, before we go over to our journal sheet here, let me just pull this over. And again, this is in your books. This is going to give you a little bit of an application as you think of Romans 11:33. But I just wanted to leave you with this before we move over to our personal application. When I went into church yesterday, when I went into church yesterday, we are talking this whole series that we're in at church on being surprised by God, being surprised by God. And even the disciples who followed him for a long time were constantly surprised by him. Constantly. And we talked specifically in church yesterday on John, I think it was John 13. So if you want a little bit more reading to this, I would love for you to just take a look at John 13 if you want to read later. But these were the disciples, again, being surprised by God and really focusing in on John 13, his servanthood. God took his own personal hands. And this just wowed me yesterday in church. And when I woke up this morning and did this devotional, it just all went together. And I thought, wow, I got to share this because it was just so sweet. But when the Passover supper came, and Jesus sat with his disciples, whose hands washed the disciples' feet? Whose hands? Jesus' hands, God's hands. And I love that in here, Peter, who I love the personality of Peter, when Jesus went around their little area where they sat, they didn't sit at tables during Passover. They sat kind of close to the floor with like a round lowered table. And back then, there were no pavement streets. There were nothing like that. I mean, it was dirt. You walked on dirt. And so as you arrived at your guest house, which in the Passover supper, it wasn't a guest house, it was an upper room that they were able to go to and just spend this last bit of time with Jesus. But here's the thing. The disciples did not even understand what Jesus was up to. His ways are so unsearchable and so inscrutable. His plans for eternity, they didn't even know. And so whatever's going on in your life right now, God knows. He's under the foundation of everything. The fullness of Christ is greater than everything that's going on in your life, and our minds cannot grasp the greatness of God. That is something to be fully grateful for. And you will be, if you receive this and you honor this, you will be surprised by God, because all he wants to do is enrich you. He wants to enrich you, but he wants you to trust him. And so here he is at this Passover supper, and because usually when you went to somebody's home, a guest home, there was always a servant at the front door that was going to wash the feet. Well, because they were in the upper room of this house for their Passover supper, the Last Supper, there was no servant. It was just a room that Jesus put together. You know who the servants was? It was God's hands, Jesus's hands. He went around to each disciple, put a towel around him, and washed their feet. And yet, Peter says, he says, Lord, you are not going to wash my feet. He says this in John 13, and Jesus answered him and said, what I'm doing, you do not understand. That's why I loved this verse with this devotion, because he says, what I am doing, you do not understand, but you will know after this. I want you to be thinking about that in your life today as you just walk through this series of gratitude. Sometimes we don't understand what God is up to, even in the hard times, even in the crisis times. And here he tells Peter, what I'm doing, you will not understand. There are things right now I just do not understand, but I know they are in God's hands. And I know God's ways are unsearchable and inscrutable and so much higher and greater than mine. And he says, but you will know after this. And Peter said to him, you shall never wash my feet. And Jesus answered him and said, if I do not wash you, you have no part with me. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. Like, dunk me. Give me a full bath. And here's the part I want you to understand. If you're following in the ministry, if you're watching this devotional, I coupled Romans 11:33 with John 13. I think they went wonderful together in us not understanding God. And here's Peter having a conversation with him. And Jesus said to him, this is important. Listen to this part. He who is bathed needs only to wash his feet, but is completely clean, and you are clean, but not all of you. For he knew who would betray him. Therefore he said, you are not all clean. So when he washed their feet, taken his garments and sat down again, he said to them, do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you say, well, for so I am. If I then, your God and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you should do as I have done to you. And so here he is saying about these greater things that are coming ahead that we cannot see and that we will not understand. But in the midst of it, serve. Be grateful that you can serve, that you can do something onto another. And the part where he says you already have been bathed fully from head to toe is salvation. Your one main shower, your one main bath is part of God's ways that we do not understand. But he went to the cross. And I love this part because it says here in our devotion, asking for and receiving daily bread at God's hands plays a vital part in learning to trust him. Christ went to the cross and was broken and poured out his blood for us so we could get through life challenges. This is something that is unsearchable and inscrutable, that our minds cannot grasp. But all we need to do now is show up daily for a footbath. The main shower has been done. We show up for a footbath. What happens at a footbath? We just take in a daily portion of his bread. That is what we're doing today. A daily portion of his bread, a daily portion of his promise, a daily portion of his truth. Because that is what we have to believe. That's what we have to behold so we can become the fullness of Christ, even in the midst of things we don't understand, because we have to remember his wisdom and his knowledge are greater. And that is the picture he left at the Last Supper to the disciples. And so my favorite part there, again, is when he tells them, you will not understand now, but after this, you will. So let's look at what you can do for application. Even in the worst of circumstances, God's hand is generous in blessing. Identify today your top 10 blessings. Maybe look in some of those awful circumstances, some of those hard moments. Maybe you're not going through one now, but maybe you have passed through the valley and you can remember God's hands. Let's identify your top 10 blessings and place them here. God's plan to save us is incredible. His blueprints for creation of our universe are beyond our imagination. He is so rich in wisdom and knowledge. Even the smartest scientist will never figure out God's ways. That is why we have to operate in faith. Because if you do not have faith, you are going to focus so much on what's unsearchable and what's inscrutable and things that you cannot fathom that you begin to deny out of your human reasoning. He's so much greater than us. He's beyond us. He's so rich in wisdom and knowledge. What else can we do but go to him and ask him to open our minds to his work and his will in our lives? And he will do that. Lord Jesus, because of you, I have every spiritual blessing I need. Thank you for rescuing me. Again, thinking of John 13, thank you for my ultimate shower from head to toe, the cleansing of your blood. Your body was broken for me. That is unbelievable, unsearchable, and inscrutable. Thank you that I can show up daily with my dirty feet, my dirty life, and that your word will revive me and restore me. Thank you again for rescuing me from my personal pit of darkness, my dirty feet, transferring me into your kingdom and redeeming me and forgiving me. Even in the worst of times, what have you done for me is beyond comprehension. Thank you for your hand in my life. So in my spaces, I wrote some very personal things. And I came from a lot of shame. 2 abortions in college left me feeling pitiful, disgusted, full of shame. And in the moment when I made that decision, it was full of flesh. This was before Christ. And when I met Christ in another pit of my life, which is when my marriage was falling apart, and I was still carrying the baggage of the shame from before, I was so thankful for another servant that washed my feet. And when I say washed my feet, met me where I was at and told me about how much God loved me and told me that he is so greater than my shame. And I couldn't understand that. It was unsearchable. And when I began to lean into his word and see the hand of God and understand the depth of his love and the depth of his servanthood and why he went to the cross, I received that. I took that shower from head to toe, and that shame is gone. That disgust is gone. That depression is gone. And now I show up daily thanking God for that blessing, thanking God for his plan. Not every day is easy. They're hard days, but I have watched the hand of God in my life and I have watched him work. So dear sister, wherever you are today, allow God to work. Believe in his hand. Believe in what you cannot see and take some time with him. Now, if you do have this journal, there's another page that I did. I'm just going to flip through. It's a beautiful journal. This was my journal prompt. And this morning, right after I got out of the bath, if you haven't watched my video, I am doing some fun videos on YouTube of just decorating Christmas and being grateful for my surrounding because that's a passion of mine. So I did post my bathtub area that I decorated. And right when I get out of that, I do my journal in the morning. So this is sitting in my beauty area where I get ready and, do my skincare routine and stuff real quick after my workout. But today I closed my eyes and circled my finger around. And the one I landed on was in the second row, the fourth one down, and it says something outside your window. And so I was reminded that in my bath this morning, I am surrounded by windows and I watched the clouds move and I watched the clouds bring these interesting shapes. And then I began to sit back and think about how many Instagram photos, TikToks, whatever you want to call it, reels, where people spotted a sign or a picture, whether it was a dove or an angel or a lion, but God would make something out of the clouds. And I remember once seeing a big heart during a time that I was struggling, and it was out of the clouds. And so as I watched those clouds, I didn't see anything, crazy this morning, but I was reminded that he can speak to you through the clouds. He's that powerful. He can speak to you through nature. He can speak to you in the most unsearchable ways, and I know those ways. And so I jotted some things down when I looked out the window. I jotted in that little heart, the little bow up at the top piece of paper, I jotted the reminder that I had of the heart that he made for me in a season in the clouds. And as I watched the clouds move today, depending on the wind and the season change here, I was thinking of God's movement. And I thanked God for his movement in my life. Some days it feels slow, sometimes it feels fast, but he is moving. And so I jotted that down in the little bow below. I put, God is always moving like the clouds. And when he decides to show you something that's unsearchable and inscrutable, he will. He will and he can. And then around that flower and just some of the orange parts, I began to write the other things that I was grateful for out my window. Seasons change, birds in the sky, the wind blowing. And I jotted down those things that I could remember. So take a gratitude prompt, take some time and posture your soul and fill out your journal prompt. So I did that already this morning. The next thing that I will do, which I absolutely love, is my evening routine. And I will do this tonight. The reason why I will do it tonight is I take a look at this. 3 things that I'm grateful for today. The best part of today was, and what can I learn from today's experiences? And tomorrow I'm looking forward to. Let's just ponder that right now and take that in. And when you go to bed tonight, fill in. Now over on my Instagram, which is Heather Baxter 1, all small letters, no caps, Heather Baxter 1, I will go to bed and I will share this with you tonight. So I'm going to be looking for where my God and his hand, today was God's hand, where is his hand? Where is it moving? And by the end of today, I'm going to list 3 more grateful things. I'm going to list the best part of the day. Even if it was a bad day, I will find his hand. What can I learn from today's experiences? I will share that. I don't know what I have in store for me today, but I'm going to look for his hand. And what am I looking forward to tomorrow? So I will share that over on my Instagram. Thank you for spending 20 minutes with me today and doing our devotion. I love you, sweet sisters. Thank you for being on this adventure. And God is so good. Have an awesome day, sisters.